Welcome to another edition of the All 32 Pod. Mike Giardi, Will Parkinson alongside. I'm playing hurt today, Will. Took the dog out for a walk. It's a sheet of ice. Your boy went down. Oh. I landed on the good shoulder, not the one that I just had the cortisone shot in. But I don't know that anyone saw it, but my pride was definitely hurt as I hit the ground.
If it makes you feel better, I was taking my dog down the stairs yesterday and fell down the stairs. So my left ass cheek and right shoulder feel horrible.
Yeah.
The dog went 60 feet in the air. Luckily landed on me, hates me. It's a disaster, man.
Yeah. We got a lot of snow and then we got the rain and now it's just literally, it's a sheet of ice out there. This is a reminder, the injuries and everything else that comes with the show brought to you by Prizepicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I thought as we get closer and closer to the combine and closer to free agency, that we'd look at the most intriguing teams, in our opinion, in the National Football League as we enter this period where money's going to be flying. There'll be trade talks. We'll be hearing stuff about the draft and all that. Both of us planning on being at the combine in Indianapolis. But I wanted to start first with, this is going to shock you, the team in my backyard. They have $121 million in cap space. That's the New England Patriots. Nobody has more. They have the number 4 overall pick. They have 4 picks in the top 77. They have a brand new coach in Mike Vrabel, who obviously has past success. They have Drake May, and it's like, okay, all of a sudden for the first time, probably since 2021 when they went all in that free agent class to mixed reviews. That was Matthew Judon, Hunter Henry. Those are things that worked. Jonnu Smith, Nelson Aguilar. Those are things that didn't work. But they have an opportunity here to take a roster that has been bottom 3 in the league for multiple years. They've just won 8 games over the last two seasons. And they have an opportunity, Will, to add potential blue chippers at the top, either via the draft and free agency, but also just build up the middle class of this roster, which quite frankly has eroded. And it's one of the reasons why they're a bottom 3 roster in the league.
Middle class, huh? We're doing political talk now. Should we do tariffs next? Maybe a little Canada, U.S., 51st state. By the way, the extreme tangent, because we're talking Boston. This is not political, but it's a question. Will Trump be there in Boston on Thursday night? You'd imagine so, yeah?
He's been showing up. Yeah, he's been showing up to everything lately.
Absolute. That's going to be awesome. That's going to be must-watch TV. I've progressively gotten more into hockey as life's gone on. I was really into it as a kid and whatever. Couldn't skate, so I kind of hated it for a little bit. That was some of the best hockey, like pure, just like great hockey there tonight. I was like, wow, we missed it. We had no football. We have no baseball. Giancarlo Stan's already hurt. Like I needed something, and that helps. But no, in terms of the Patriots, I think they're extremely intriguing, as you mentioned, for a lot of different reasons. But I think the biggest one being, as you mentioned, a ton of picks, a ton of cap space. They're in the proverbial. The Jets have been there a lot of times. The Knicks, you always think of, they've got all these picks, all this cap space. What do you do with it? Because we've been here before. The Patriots have had cap space. They spent aggressively, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and it kind of worked for a little bit, and it slowly dissipated quickly. We've seen them have a bunch of draft picks and under Bill, and they would trade back and accumulate like these monster classes of 15 guys. And you're like, well, half these guys can't possibly make the roster. What are we doing? I'm inclined to say they actually do need one of those. Like, I know they probably won't trade back, but I'm somewhat inclined to say, like, what if they moved back 4 or 5 spots and picked up an extra 2 3s and they're just like, hey, we're going to stack this roster with so much young talent. Mike's going to get them coached up. We're going to add some really savvy veterans that are going to go along with Mike's culture. And then we're hoping that we're going to be good this year, but we want to be really good for the next 4 to 5 years, like an elongated thing. That's probably the smart move. The other argument, I guess, and we talked about this the other day with the different moves they could make. Do they go, hey, Drake May's on a rookie deal. He's going to cost us $60 million a year in 36 months or whatever. Maybe it's longer, but whatever. You get my point. Do we go for the splashy? Like, can we all of a sudden be a win now team in the next 12 months? I just think their balance of what they do here is so crucial. If like they get short-sighted, the Crafts, I think Robert wants to be relevant again, and I get it. I just would say be just a little cautious of maybe overstating how easy it's going to be to all of a sudden overtake Buffalo, even be better than Miami and the Jets at this point. Like I just would say, like, I hope they're smart about how they approach this, because could go great. It also could look like the Nets offseason in 2012, where they had the most cap space and all these picks, and they traded for bad veterans and they signed a bunch of terrible guys because they just wanted to spend money. That's not the way to go about this.
I don't think they've built this roster properly start talking about 2015, 16, somewhere in that range. And obviously they won a Super Bowl in 18. And then things started to fall apart, Brady's last year, etc. To me, the easy thing is to look at the shiny object, which is Washington this past year, and say, oh, they were where we were, and they made this huge leap and played in the NFC Championship game. Well, as I said in the last pod, and I'll say it again a number of times going forward, their roster was better than yours heading into the offseason. There were a lot of reasons why they didn't attain or they dipped to the lows that they did. Then they draft Jaden Daniels. They add a bunch of veterans, like I'm talking about, more of those middle class $8 to $10 million players. And all of a sudden, Jaden's special. It all comes together and they make a run. If I'm the Patriots, I'm thinking about, let's do this the right way for the first time in a long time. Let's not get crazy. Let's not shoot for you'll shoot for the moon in terms of there's a couple players that you're definitely going to earmark and you're going to be willing to spend. T. Higgins, you're going to be willing to spend $30 million, somewhere in that ballpark, right? But be able to pivot and add depth and add competition to your team and build this roster up and say, look, if we go from 4 wins to 7 or 8 next year, that's what but we're building in the right direction. That's what we're talking about. Don't go crazy and end up getting to 8 wins and then going, okay, well, we just put everything on the table. Now where do we go? Right? So to me, be smart about how you're going to do this. Be smart about it for the first time in a long time and build this the proper way. And if they do that, they have a chance to be relevant, as you mentioned, for a number of years. But don't screw it up.
Yeah, and
they screwed up the draft last year, right? I mean, we'll see how they get coached up this year, but like, there's a lot riding on this offseason. Do it the right way.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say in the Patriots, front load the money.
Yep.
Do not get yourself in let's sign 15 guys just because we can, and then it's like, well, if Drake May is the guy you think he is, and Christian Gonzalez is the guy we all know he is, they're both going to be top of the market guys when their contracts come up. You don't want to be stuck paying the guys you kind of were trying to help get you through this patch for void years into oblivion. Like, void years are great and they're extremely useful, but you want to use them on the guys that are worth it. You don't want to, I'm sorry, but if you go give I'm just using Josh Palmer as an example. I don't know why. Right. Josh Palmer wants 2 for $20. It seems ridiculous, but whatever. I'll just go with the example. Pay Josh Palmer like all of the money this year and get it over with. And it's like, hey, if he's good, we'll keep paying him. And if he sucks, we'll get him out. But don't put yourself in that situation. I think that's how you get these bad. It's like when you extend Taysom Hill into oblivion because you can, that doesn't mean you should. They're just, don't get yourself in that situation. I don't think they will. I'm just saying that's just the one thing to avoid, in my opinion.
Yeah, you have to wonder again about the ownership and their urgency to be relevant again after being irrelevant for multiple seasons. All right, who's number 1 on your list?
Okay, I'm going to go Washington. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I feel like I talk about them way more than I should. They got to the NFC title game this year in a year where I think I picked them to finish 4th in division, 3rd in the division. Didn't think they'd be great. Thought they'd win probably 5 to 6 games. I don't think I was alone, but nonetheless, I missed on that. And they've got the quarterback. They seemingly have a top 15 receiver in McLaurin. I'm not going to get crazy and sit here and say that he's all of a sudden he had a really good year last year and he's been really good for a while. I think he's a really good player. That's okay to just be a really good player.
Yeah, he's good.
He's good. I think Brian Robinson's a good player. I think you need another back. I think the offensive line's fine, but you could use help. I think the defense has some really fun players. I think they have some huge holes, and I think they have a coach. So it's like, wow, they have all this cap space. They have a good amount of draft picks. I mean, the Lattimore trade was obviously a disaster, or maybe it won't be. Maybe he'll be fine long term, but he's kind of been hurt or bad for a while now. So I don't know if 2017 Marcus Lattimore is going to reappear anytime soon. But that said, we know that the NFC East every year is a different winner. They overachieve. They give me a little bit of again, it's a bad example, but I'll use the Jets example. A little 2009 Jets-ish, just from the perspective of it was like, hey, rookie quarterback, and you're like you've arrived. And like we thought you'd be good and improved and exciting, but we didn't think we'd see this. Maybe a bad example. Or maybe 2006 Jets, I could give as a better example when they had, went up to New England, got boat raced, but like the team had no business being a playoff team. And all of a sudden, whoa, you find yourself in the playoffs, you get this experience. Now you got to capitalize. We talked about in New England, how do they balance this thing? If I'm Washington, this is balls to the wall. I'm going all out after Crosby and Garrett and TJ Watt and any of these big names that potentially maybe could be on the market. T. Higgins, and I'm calling on Jamar Chase, and I'm calling on every big name receiver, big name edge rusher, like corner, whoever it is, because like you have this window of 3 more years of Jaden Daniels, who might be a top 5 quarterback already. Maybe. I don't know if we want to go that far, but he's damn close.
He's in the top 10. At the very least, he's in the top 10.
You get top 10 quarterback making $9 million a year. You better take advantage of this window. And again, they have a new stadium eventually, and like they might go back to being the Redskins. Like there's a lot of positive things happening for their franchise that struggled a lot. They're so intriguing because last offseason I felt like they signed a lot of guys to set a culture. Now it's like, hey, Bobby, I really appreciate the time. Now I'm going to go get Zach Bond. I'm going to go pay him, take him from the Eagles, and be like, now it's Zach Bond and Frankie Louva running around. You're like, whoa, okay. Now this, we got something here. And I keep coming back to Myles Garrett and T. Higgins because they're the 2 biggest names that we know are at least somewhat on the market. The other guys I think we're kind of guessing could be maybe. I don't know, man. They walk out with T. Higgins, Myles Garrett. I'm going to think very hard about picking them to win the NFC East if that's what the offseason looks like for them.
Yeah, $79 million and change in cap space. I've been saying this because, again, Patriot fans are obsessed with T. Higgins, and they're also obsessed with Ronnie Stanley, the left tackle for Baltimore, who's about to be 31 years old. Likely, well, we'll see. I assume he gets to free agency, but you never know with Baltimore. They can make some things happen and keep him around. But it's like you're not the only team that's going to be interested in them. And Washington just won a bunch of games and ended up in the NFC Championship game, and people got to see how special Jaden Daniels was. So if you're T. Higgins and you say, how many games did Drake May and the Patriots win last year? Oh, Jaden Daniels won how many? Oh, I saw Jaden Daniels making plays in the NFC Championship game, even though his team was overmatched to a degree. He was still out there balling. Like, yeah, that's a pretty good place. I might want to go there. Hey, Ronnie Stanley, living in Baltimore, you want to move slightly, go into the DC area, be the blindside protector for Jaden Daniels? Yeah, that sounds pretty good too. So to me, they should absolutely be involved in a lot of these conversations, and I think they are going to be a far more attractive option than they have been in eons because of what Jaden was able to accomplish and because of the culture that Quinn has built. They've got something here. They've got positive momentum, and they can really capitalize this offseason.
First time I can think of a Commanders/Redskins offseason that there's positive momentum, and it's not looking – again, these guys maybe T. Higgins doesn't ever get healthy again and whatever. But, like, they've always done the big name wrong side of the career signing under Dan Snyder. They seem like they might be in a much better spot with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. Can they – Can they get the guy? Can they make one of the moves they just have not been able to make in such a long time? It's like, we got the 26-year-old free agent who's going to be really good for 3 years, and we'll figure it out later. I biasly, I kind of hope they do. I'd like to see it. The league is more fun when a lot of the staple franchises are good. And I know people don't want to hear that, but people can yell at me all they want. It's going to be great this year. Yankees, Red Sox, is it going to matter? It's for the first time in a long time. I feel like it's going to matter. Yankees, Dodgers in the World Series was good for baseball. It's the highest rated World Series we've seen in 15 years. Like, you know what I mean? Lakers, Celtics is good for the league.
Yep.
So for the NFL, the Commanders, the Raiders, the Patriots, these teams that are the Steelers, and Cowboys, when they're not good, it is, people can say markets all they want. I know it's a total tangent, but I do think there's something to that. I do think that is it would be exciting to see Washington have a relevant team for more than 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the call there. I think that they're in a fantastic place. Hey, reminder, Prizepicks, the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings. Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players and up to 6 for your shot to win 1,000 times your cash. Prizepicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prizepicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Just download the app today. Use the code CLNS for $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. Let's go to my next one. And I think they're in an intriguing place, and that's the Los Angeles Rams. Once again, dangerous in the playoffs. Push the Eagles more than anyone did in the postseason. Have $35 million in cap space. Cooper Kupp has already been told, we're shopping you. So they're ready to move on from a 31, 32-year-old wide receiver. They rebuilt their defense via the draft last year. I think 8 of their 9 picks contributed heavily during the course of the season. But now there's the big question. What to do with Matthew Stafford? Stafford's contract is going to be an issue. It was an issue this past season. They pretty much told him, hey, dude, we need you to decide whether you're in or not, whether you're playing or not, so we can decide how we're going to proceed. But even if he decides, Will, that he wants to proceed in the National Football League, the question is, will the Rams, considering his injury history and his age, will they say, you know what, time to cash this chip in? Did the Giants want him? Is there some other team, the Raiders, whoever it might be, that says, we'll give you a first-round pick for Matthew Stafford, for a year of Matthew Stafford or 2 years of Matthew Stafford, or a high 2, whatever it may be. And then Los Angeles, who was in the F the picks mode for several years, is now back into give me all the picks because we're doing this well. And I think it's a fascinating spot because I think we saw that defense. They should only be better next year. Shula is back as a DC. The young players versed. They know what it is. They know what it is, what it takes to be successful in this league. And obviously they have some pieces offensively. Puka, Kyron Williams, they've rebuilt that offensive line. It's like the quarterback is a big question. And I'm fascinated to see what Les Snead and Sean McVay do because they could be in the driver's seat one way or the other, whether they decide to keep Stafford or whether they say, screw it, we're getting out of this. But where do they pivot at that point?
Yeah, I'm pretty adamant that if they go and get Darnold, Devontae Adams, and they trade Stafford for the Giants 2 and a 4, I don't know, I'm making that up, I'm going to comfortably pick them to win the division. I picked them last year, and I was right. And I think if it doesn't snow as hard, they beat Philly. Like I really feel like that. They just, I don't know. Stafford makes a better throw on that 4th down. Like something could have been done there, but they should be significantly better next year. I feel like all year, like the Rams and these good organizations usually get out before it's too late. And I love Stafford. I think he's a Hall of Famer. I know it's probably not whatever. He's better than Eli Manning. Sorry. Like he's better than Phillip Rivers in my opinion. So if at worst, Stafford's still a top 10 quarterback, but it's going to fall off eventually. And you saw Green Bay say, hey, before it gets really ugly, let's move on and it's going to suck. We don't really know if Jordan Love's going to be the guy, but we're going to have to just find out at some point. If you're the Rams, you're like, hey, we've won or gotten to a Super Bowl with 2 different quarterbacks. Like, what makes Sean McVay think he just couldn't get the same out of Sam Darnold that Kevin O'Connell, who is a great coach, I think McVay is probably one step above, obviously won a Super Bowl. Like, what's to say that they couldn't make a 30% improvement on defense? They had one more weapon to replace Kupp, who basically got exiled. And can Darnold be 75%, 80% of Stafford? And it's like, now we have a runway of 3 to 4 years. Sam's still young, Puka on a rookie deal. Kyron, they're intriguing, man, because the way they've drafted is so impressive. Verse should get better. He should tackle better next year, right? Like, yeah. Braden Fisk, I want to say Braden McGregor, who's Jets like 58th guy. Braden Fisk should only get better. Like they're just, if they get a linebacker in there, maybe too. Like
Yep.
they'd be in a nice spot. If Jalen Walker somehow falls, which I don't think I think he's gonna be on the top 10, but if he falls to the Rams somehow, I'm gonna be like, you're winning defensive player or a rookie of the year. Like you just are. They just crank these guys out, and the Rams are really interesting.
Yeah. What do you got for your next team?
I'm gonna go with the Giants. We just talked a little bit about them and maybe Stafford. Could that? I saw some people from the guys that on Talking Giants talking about it a little bit. I know it's redundant, but saying, hey, if they trade for Stafford and they keep 3, do not draft a quarterback. It's kind of what's the point of using all of your assets on? They're in a spot where they control the draft, in my opinion, because they're the logical trade-up team to 1. They're the logical trade-up team to 2. They obviously need a quarterback, but are they the Darnold team? Are they a Stafford team? Are they can these guys afford? They would be getting their own guy, which is exciting. It feels like Shador has been to the Giants, has been in, the Giants cleats, and Malik Neighbors going on and on about him. But can they afford to take a risk and maybe not be great next year with the way they're at? It's just when they're a big market with a regime that is very lucky to still have their jobs. The Giants, again, premier franchise in the league, and they've been just as bad as the Jets and the Browns and these other teams for the last decade, really. So I don't know. I find them extremely interesting. There's so many different options they could go, but they cannot afford to miss because these guys will get fired, and probably fired midseason if it doesn't go well.
I'm fascinated to hear from both Dable and Shane at the scouting combine. And
Dable giving you absolutely nothing in his best impression.
Wellington Mara said he basically said, I'm running out of patience, right? So he gave them one more opportunity here. So the burden is definitely on them. They're in a position where I talk about the Patriots. At least the Patriots have the quarterback, right? They don't have the quarterback. These guys are desperate to keep their jobs. And it's like, are you going to do something stupid that impedes the build? And you should be building the right way. I just don't know if they have the patience from ownership on down to build it the right way. And does that lead to just a stupid trade? Do they overpay for Stafford? Do they overvalue Shador Sanders and draft him at 3 when quarterbacks always get overdrafted. He's going to get overdrafted, but he's not the 3rd best player in the draft. Are you doing yourself a disservice if that's what you do? They have $47 million in cap space, so they have some money to once again attempt to aggressively alter their offensive line, to add perhaps another playmaker, although Darius Slayton's been pretty good for them headed to free agency. Whether or not they keep him, they haven't really shown much of an inclination to pay him what he's thought he's worth. But they have some money to play around with, and obviously some of that money could end up getting used if they make the deal for Stafford. But they're in an interesting spot, and I could see it being a complete train wreck. So much for them relies on getting this right, and I just don't know that they've proven to us.
Yeah, just
that they can.
What's the because you won 9 games with Daniel Jones? Cool. Look back at that season. I mean, they're beating the worst teams in the league. So they're really fascinating to me.
Yeah. My next one is the Chiefs. And I think this is largely because obviously you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Andy Reid, you have Steve Spagnuolo. Your core, your foundation is better than anybody else's in the National Football League. However, you asked Mahomes, and you have asked him for multiple years now to do more with less. And it worked. 3 straight Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl wins. Boy, it was so hard to watch them play offense this year in terms of trying to generate stuff with the playmakers, diminishing playmaker in Travis Kelce. And then, obviously, and we talked about this leading into the Super Bowl, after the Super Bowl, the offensive line, in particular, the tackle spots, they've aggressively tried to address it. It just hasn't worked. And so now they're in a spot where they have, depends on what site you look at, I have them either underwater cap-wise.
Yeah, they're underwater.
Or Spotrac has them at $5.3 million in cap space. But
either
way, they have a lot of work to do just to create enough money to address left tackle to address potentially replacing Travis Kelce, who could very well retire. In fact, that seems to be more of the feeling now that maybe Kelce is going to hang up his cleats. And it's like, do they just say, you know what, we're just going to set the book, we'll try to middle it for one more year, and then next year when we've cleared some space, go back all in? Or do they say, don't mess with the window here. We've got the guy, figure out a way to get it done. This is exactly what they did in 2021, right? They lose the Super Bowl to the Bucs. They trade for Orlando Brown. They signed Joe Thuney. They rebuilt their offensive line in one fell swoop in the offseason, and boom, away they go. So to me, I'm really curious to see how they respond to losing the Super Bowl, losing in the fashion that they did, and realizing, yeah, we won a ton of games. We were the number one seed, but boy, we were living by this, by the skin of our teeth every single week. And we can't afford to do that, or we shouldn't do that with someone like Patrick Mahomes and with Andy, who's older, and you don't know how much longer Andy's going to keep coaching.
Yeah, I'm a little. I don't know how I should say this. I'm not worried long term because I think they'll be able to continue to reinvent the wheel. But they've missed pretty badly on some of these, investments and whatever. They've kind of gotten away with it, for lack of a better term. Mike, few issues here. Not an issue. Mahomes is cap numbers in the high 60s, but they can only restructure so much of it, right? His base salary, I'm sure they can convert to a bonus, and maybe they save 16 there, or Chris Jones's numbers up in the 50s. Again, you can do something there, but we'll see. The ones I'm kind of curious about: Travis Kelce, no guaranteed money left. He's at $20 million. Joe Thuney's $27 million against the cap, no guaranteed money left. He's 33, still a great player. You got to do something. You got to figure something else out there. And I'm sure he's looking for one more, like, hey, can I get 2 for 30 or 2 for 50, whatever for the guard market is. The one other one that's we haven't talked about, or two of them, Trent McDuffie has to get paid in the next 12 months, and he's going to get top of market. Whether it's a slot market or the outside corner market, obviously will be important. They're going to lose Trey Smith. I would be really shocked. Someone's going to pay him $25 million a year, and I just don't know if Kansas City's going to do that. So now you're replacing your second best lineman, or even maybe arguably your best, and then you have to replace both tackles, and you got to rebuild some. They're just in a weird spot, and I think Kelce ends up coming back maybe for one more year. They basically say, hey, can you just take an incentive laden deal? We'll take care of you on the back end, or they do something there. They're in a weird spot, and I'm a little. Again, will I probably pick them to win the division? Yeah, probably. But I'm not. I don't feel great about where they are right now. They could change. They're a great organization, great front office, the whole thing. No one's questioning that, but they can't really afford to miss on a few of these picks. They can't really afford to miss on a trade, or even like Justin Reed might leave, so they have to replace him likely.
Nick Bolton,
another one. Charles Omenihu. There's a lot of guys that are key contributors for them that have been underpaid for a while. I think would probably like to get paid, and they've all won. So it's not like you can do it's going to be hard. I feel like the Patriots went through this, and it kind of feels like it's just harder and harder to build around guys if you miss. You can't afford misses. You just really can't.
Right. Like a huge piece of the puzzle for them, if things were to go favorably for them this offseason, is the development of Kingsley Suamataia, who played left tackle, started the season, quickly found his way to the bench, never got out, extremely athletic. He's a talented football player. It didn't look good in year one, and that's not uncommon for rookie tackles. A lot of guys don't just come in and dominate right away, but I don't know what he's doing this offseason, but I know that if I'm the coaching staff, I'm in his ear as much as humanly possible, and I'm making sure that he's putting in the time, because if somehow, some way, you can get him to be your starting left tackle, or even if he ends up as the right tackle, but you're like, that's good. Otherwise, you miss on a second-round pick when you're in this window. That's a difficult thing to do. What do you got for your next team?
Colts. I'll keep this one short and sweet. I always say I end up talking for 8 hours, but Colts have a potential coach problem. They have a potential. Well, they probably have an owner problem. They might have a GM problem. They might have a quarterback problem. And they're in a division that feels like every year you could convince yourself any of the four could win. The Colts, I felt like I was higher than most on them. I felt like going into the year, and I thought they showed flashes at times, but the more I watch them, I kind of feel like they're just having a mid-off every game. It's like, cool, like, these guys are good, but like this part of the roster kind of sucks. And like, I don't know. I'm very intrigued on what they do to address it here. They always have cap space. They always have all these picks. And it feels like it's like always pushed into the next year. We're always like, when's Chris Ballard going to spend big? And look, they spent big on Michael Pittman. And I was honestly shocked that they actually did it. I love Pittman. Like, it's nothing against him, but I just was surprised they actually went for it. What do they make of this offense? They've spent big on Jonathan Taylor. He looks like more of the player that, he was pre, contract and stuff. But is Anthony Richardson good? Does he suck? Like, what is he? It's like, I don't know. I really don't know what to make of them. And I just feel like this is another example. I kind of went, I guess, with one more exciting and two teams that are probably more negative, but this is to me, and I don't know if Irsay will do this. This is either a Richardson, it clicks, and we're looking at an extension for all these guys, and like, hey, they might have hit. This is awesome. They draft Tyler Warren, and it's like, oh, look at this offense. We talk ourselves in. They have Richardson and Tyler Warren running like Wildcat, like, and whatever. But there's also the possibility these guys are fired by week 5. Like, there is. Like, they played Joe Flacco last year, and it wasn't a decision to play Joe Flacco because Richardson was hurt. It was like, he's not helping us win right now, and we need.
He wasn't doing the work. He wasn't doing the work, which is just like, look, he's a young kid. You get like it. There's a process here, but like when you have to be told, hey, you're the franchise. You can't be leaving early like that. You can't be showing up late and leaving early. Like that's not how it goes. I think they're a fascinating team, and one of the reasons I think they're fascinating is strictly for the draft. Because no, they're not going to use their first round pick on a quarterback. But would it shock you if in the second round they said,
"Are they a Milrow team?"
Could be. Are they a Jackson?
Could you convince yourself like?
Are they a Jackson Dart team? Are they a team that says, or hey, the man who's gotten a ton of buzz here over the last week? Are they a Tyler Shuck team? Are they one of those teams that says, we don't trust our quarterback? And I know we picked him in the top 5, and there have been some flashes, but like, we can't do that again. We have to put some heat on this kid and see if he responds. And if he doesn't, guys are going to lose their jobs. To your point, Ballard's gone, Steichen's gone. Like that's that. But I'm curious. I'm really curious to see how Chris Ballard plays it, because they've got to have a better answer there.
They have a type. They're the Tyler Shuck team. They have to be like 6'5". They take the big. They're going to take the tall, big arm quarterback and say, screw the injury history and mid tape. And he's 30 years old. Screw it. Let's go for it. Like that. They're just, again, I don't think they're interesting because I think they're awesome. I think they're interesting because this is potential to be, again, another regime that we were talked about. A lot of those regimes that we thought were going to get let go, and they weren't. This was one of them. The Giants were one. Those were the two to me. That and Trent Baalke were like, really? Okay. Right. We'll run this thing back. Again, I don't know, but they got to know on Richardson pretty soon here, because you can't really go into year 4 having serious doubts. It's got to be like, we know by week 8 that it's finally clicked. He put together 4 good weeks in a row where his completion percentage was over 20%. And what I mean? And it's the 9 for 31 with 2 touchdowns is just it's not sustainable. We saw it last year. So,
well, and it's so funny because you saw it up close and personal. He played terrific against the Jets.
Unbelievable.
He came into Gillette Stadium and played awesome against the Patriots. Won the game late. And if you look at the game, you're going to look at some of the numbers and say he had 3 40-plus yard, 35, 40-plus yard passes dropped, where he put the ball right in the bucket and dropped. So it's like there is unquestionable physical gifts there, but he has to figure out how to put it together and put it together quickly. Otherwise, jobs are lost. And, his massive contract extension, that's probably going by the wayside too, at least for this crack. I think you and I share our last team here, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals.
Oh, yeah.
And so the Bengals, They have
Let
$44
me ask
million.
you a question before you go.
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
Shoot.
If I gave you over under or more or less with our friends at Prizepicks,
Yeah.
more or less 12.5 months till Joe Burrow requests a trade, would you say more or less? Because that's where I think the most interesting part of this offseason.
So can you ask me that question in May?
Yeah.
Because I think the next 8 weeks are really 12 weeks are really going to determine how Joe Burrow feels about Mike Brown and the Bengals organization, because they have some space, $44 million in cap space. But when I mentioned that Jamar Chase needs his extension heading into the 5th year of his
And he wants to be paid literally $40 million a year.
Yes.
So
T. Higgins, who they're making all kinds of noise about, and I've talked to people in Cincinnati, like, that's real. Jamar Chase is one on their list of who they want to retain. T. Higgins is number 2. You'll notice I'm not mentioning Trey Hendrickson, who has asked for a new contract or a trade. He's below those 2 guys. From what I can gather, that's how they're approaching it, which is, I get it in terms of an age standpoint. I don't necessarily get it in terms of your defense is absolutely horrific, and he was the one good piece of your defense. But Joe Burrow is putting a ton of pressure on Mike Brown and Duke Tobin and saying, hey, did you see what the Eagles just did? They paid A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, signed Saquon Barkley, have a ton of money invested in their offensive line. They got pieces on defense too. They paid them. Why are we letting all these guys walk out the door? And just recently, Jermaine Pratt, who is a slightly above average linebacker.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah, he asked for a trade because he's clearly found out that, well, right now we're taking all our resources and we're putting them in this direction, and that's not in your direction. So whether they do that or not, basically no one tells Mike Brown that he has to trade him because he just tends to be like, well, screw you. You can go sit over there and I'll let you rot. But that's sort of the tumultuous offseason that they're dealing with. And there's a lot of pressure on them to get it right, because I think you're absolutely correct. I think if Jamar Chase doesn't get his extension and is pissed off and holds out, and T. Higgins ends up somewhere else, and Trey Hendrickson gets traded, and Jermaine Pratt gets traded, or he's holding out, I think Joe Burrow's going to go, what the bleep are you guys doing here? And he said, Burrow has said, by the way, too, just to add, I'll put my money where my mouth is. I'll restructure. I got no problem restructuring. If you want to keep these guys, I'm willing to do this. Which, look, he doesn't lose money when he does this. Don't get me wrong.
It's a stat check and
but at least he's saying, like, not you figure it out. Like, I'll help you figure it out, but just get it done. And I think this is. I think you can make the argument they could be number 1. We used them last year, but you can make the case they're number 1 because Joe Burrow becoming unhappier by the minute and then not getting what he wants would send seismic shockwaves across the league.
Yeah, maybe if you're the Jets, you just hoard picks to trade for Joe Burrow next year.
Look at you.
You know how many people on the Bengals roster have guaranteed money left? I'll give you a hint. I'll just tell you. It's 6 players. 6 of the 53 have money left. Their roster they went all in the last 4 years, as they should have. They got to a Super Bowl. They got to a title game. They've done all of the things you should do with a quarterback on a rookie deal. Again, they did it perfectly. But Joe Burrow's deal kicks in this year for the first year. It's, again, $46 million. He can't really restructure, by the way, that much. He's $35 million of it's guaranteed. Like that. Whatever. Most of the salary, sure, you can do that. Maybe it frees up $25 million. I guess I would say this with them. I think not prioritizing Trey Hendrickson's dumb. He's been just point blank the most productive, or one of the 2 or 3 most productive edge rushers in the league for half a decade now. I would let T. Higgins walk. He's awesome, but he's got hamstring injury after hamstring injury, and like I don't know. Do you think it's going to stop? Like, I don't know. Do you want to be the team? They should have traded him last year. I said this. We had this whole conversation at the deadline. This is why they're interesting to me. They could have literally gotten probably at least a 2, if not a 1 for Hendrickson, probably. And maybe let's just say they got a 2 for Hendrickson. They could have gotten a 2 for T. Higgins, I'm sure. Probably could have gotten a 4 for Jermaine Pratt, or a 5. Like, they could have gotten, I don't know, I'm trying to think who else on their roster they could have traded. They could have traded Logan Wilson at this point. You know, like they could have done a lot of different things and said, hey, we're going to fully reset. We're going to take our lumps the rest of this year and probably next year, but we're going to build this whole young roster, what the Rams have done and these other teams, the Chiefs, and we're going to pay Jamar and Joe, and we're just going to roll with that. That's going to be our two guys. They're our franchise cornerstones, and everything else is going to be this youth movement. We're going to get shrewd about the 1 year, $6 million corner that plays for us. We're going to get the 1 year, $8 million, whatever it is. They held on. They don't make the playoffs. And like, as much as we talked ourselves into it, were they really beating the way Buffalo looked? Were they really beating Buffalo? Would have been competitive because of the offense, but they now have a new defensive coordinator who I think stinks, by the way, who literally cost Notre Dame a chance to come back in that national championship game. We don't know if I have no idea what they're doing. Like point blank, like I like the Cincinnati. I like watching them. Obviously, I'm a Dan Pitcher guy because of Corlin and whatever, but I just am very confused at the plan. And last thing I'll say is, no disrespect to Trey Brown. I hope he gets a job someday. I'm very intrigued at how many teams keep interviewing a guy who's the number 3 or 4 in Cincinnati's front office, watching what's going on in their front office with a team who historically doesn't pay people. It's just, there's too much, Mike. They make no sense. Like, yeah. They might be good or bad. They just make no sense.
It felt like when they got naming rights for the stadium, naming rights for the practice facility, built the indoor practice facility, carved out the extension for Burrow, that they had turned the page. The cheap Bengals were no more. They were embracing like, now look, we make a ton of money. This is the league. You know, the media deal's nuts. We have this quarterback now that we're able to, you know, you say, what's our championship window? Well, as long as Joe Burrow is upright and vertical and playing the way he's capable of, you're in the mix. And the last year and change, it's sort of unraveled.
They almost look lucked into Burrow and Chase, and now it's like you're like, oh, did you actually still have no idea what you were doing? You just kind of got the guy that was obviously going to go one.
And Hendrickson. There was Duke Tobin had about a 18-month run where Duke Tobin was on fire, and that has also curbed. I'll give you a perfect example. They drafted Jermaine Burton, who,
oh man,
late first round, early second round talent, right? But a guy who bounced around in college. Drove everybody nuts, and Jermaine Burton absolutely vomited all over the place this year. Late for things, not showing up.
Gambling and doing one.
Yeah, completely non-impactful player. And you say to yourself, well, had you hit that pick or hit someone in that ilk, you could say, T. Higgins, we got your replacement. Yosef is a nice player. He's not the T. Higgins replacement. But if Jermaine Burton's talent had his personality and his work ethic had fit that, then they would have had a replacement. Instead, he's probably not likely to make the team next year if it keeps up. By the way, he just got for the second time in Cincinnati. This is just to keep this going. For the second time in his tenure in Cincinnati, he's been evicted from an apartment.
That's good.
An NFL player, rookie year, he's got some money. You know, wasn't a first rounder, but made some money. Has been evicted twice. So, they are as intriguing a team as there is, because this thing could implode. And if it does, Joe Burrow available would be one of the craziest things. It'd be like Luka Doncic getting traded. Oh, wait, that just happened, didn't it? You just wouldn't expect that would have happened. Anyway.
They got to. You cannot let this spiral. You can't. Like I can't say this enough. Like this is not one of those things that you can like, oh man, like now Joe's he's your franchise. Like you finally got an extended, like you've messed it up with Carson Palmer, it went south. You finally got the guy. And not only did you get the guy, you actually extended him, which no one thought was possible. The Bengals paid someone. Wow.
Yeah.
Don't now just rest on, we paid Joe.
Yeah.
Jamar's going to get paid. This is one of those things.
How much money did they cost themselves by not signing Jamar last year?
And now he had a pretty decent game last year.
Yeah.
Put on himself. Very a little, again, not to use a baseball reference, a little Aaron Judge-ish with Jamar Chase, where it's like, He wants to be there. He bet on himself, and guess what? You messed up. You should have gotten it situated. He's going to cost you a heck of a lot more money. Like, I remember Judge went from 7 for $250 or 7 for $217. It was like, oh, wow, not a bad deal. It's really team friendly. Doesn't sign it, says piss off. We'll talk after the season. He ended up going for 9 for $330 or $360, whatever it is. Like, this is what happens if you don't take care of it. Jerry in Dallas, like, we didn't put Dallas on here. I just want to give them a quick shout out of, again, I'll say this 800 times. I'm trading Micah Parsons. I'm getting an absolute haul. His value will never be higher. I am like, we need to rebuild this roster around Dak and CD. They won't do it. It's the same thing as Cincinnati. They're going to like piecemeal it and say, "Ooh, see, we spent money." Yeah. Buddy, you didn't.
do the right thing. Do the smart thing. All right, that's going to put a wrap on this edition of the All 32 Pod. Thank you for being with us as always. Appreciate the like, listen, subscribe, rate, review, do all those wonderful things so we can continue to build a brand. We'll be back with you at the end of the week, looking ahead to the Combine. Can't wait for that. It should be a fascinating week in Indianapolis. Until then, enjoy your week.
It is caught!